The Messerschmitt 262 should have been untouchable. It was a fighter jet that outclassed the P-51 Mustang in almost every way imaginable. It was over 100 miles per hour faster and came armed with absolutely devastating cannons. By all rights, it should have swept the skies clean of Allied planes. But it didn't. In fact, combat records show a pretty surprising victory in many of these dogfights. The propeller-driven P-51 Mustang, a plane that seemed destined for obsolescence, found a way to beat Germany's futuristic jet. So, what was the P-51's secret? The answer isn't what you think, and it reveals a fundamental truth about warfare that goes way beyond simple speed and firepower. The wonder weapon's shadow. In mid-1944, Allied bomber crews and their fighter escorts started reporting a new and terrifying threat in the skies over Germany. It was an aircraft that moved with unnatural speed, appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye, with no visible propeller, just a faint trail of smoke. This was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter, and on paper, it was a complete revolution. The Me 262, nicknamed the Schwalbe, or Swallow, was a machine straight out of the future. Its two Junkers Jumo 004 jet engines rocketed it to a top speed of around 540 miles per hour, leaving the fastest Allied fighter, the P-51 Mustang, struggling to keep up at around 440 miles per hour. This wasn't just a small gap. It was a massive speed advantage of 100 miles per hour. The Me 262 could climb faster, pick its fights, and run away whenever it wanted. If an Me 262 pilot didn't like his odds, he could just push the throttle and vanish. And its firepower was just as frightening. The nose of the jet was packed with four 30mm Mk-108 cannons, while fighters like the P-51 used .50 caliber machine guns, which were great for dogfighting. The Me 262's cannons were built for one thing: destroying heavy bombers. A quick 1 or 2 second burst could fire a volley of high explosive shells that would tear a B-17 Flying Fortress to pieces. German pilots even developed special boom and zoom tactics. They'd dive from high altitude, slash through a bomber formation with their cannons, and then use their incredible speed and climb rate to get away before the escorting Mustangs could even react. For the Allied airmen, it felt like fighting a ghost. The Me 262 was a symbol of German tech, a weapon that looked like it could turn the tide of the air war. You could say it was the perfect interceptor. The underdog champion. Facing this jet-powered menace was the North American P-51 Mustang. By 1944, the Mustang was pretty much the peak of propeller fighter design. Its beautiful laminar flow wings sliced through the air with very little drag, and the powerful, reliable Rolls-Royce Merlin engine gave it amazing performance at high altitudes. Best of all, with external fuel tanks, the P-51 had an incredible range of over 1,600 miles, letting it escort American bomber fleets all the way to Berlin and back. It was the P-51 that had finally broken the back of the Luftwaffe's conventional fighter force earlier in 1944, giving the Allies control of the skies over Europe. But against the Me 262, the Mustang was, on the surface, completely outmatched. In a head-to-head comparison of speed and climb rate, it was no contest. The Me 262 was just in another league. The first American pilots who ran into the jets could only watch in frustration as the German planes streaked past them, totally untouchable. The P-51, the king of the prop-driven age, suddenly looked like a relic. So, the question for every Allied commander was a desperate one. How do you fight something you can't even catch? The Mustang was the reigning champion, but a new challenger was here, and it seemed to have an unbeatable advantage. The stage was set for a classic David and Goliath fight, thousands of feet in the sky. Cracks in the Silver Arrow. The MME-262 was a masterpiece of advanced aeronautics, but it was also a machine that was rushed into service, built with shoddy materials, and stuck with the problems of brand new, unproven technology. These weren't just small issues, they were deep, fatal flaws, an Achilles heel that Allied pilots would soon learn to exploit with brutal efficiency. The first and biggest weakness was its revolutionary Jumo 004 engines. As groundbreaking pieces of tech, they were incredibly unreliable and fragile. Made with lower quality steel and alloys because of wartime shortages, the engines had a terrifyingly short service life, sometimes lasting only 10 to 25 hours before needing to be completely replaced. Pilots had to be extremely careful with the throttle. Jamming it forward too fast could flood the engine with fuel, causing the turbine blades to overheat and fail in a catastrophic way. This slow throttle response meant the ME-262 had awful acceleration. While its top speed was incredible, it took a long time to get there, leaving it sluggish and vulnerable at lower speeds. And that led straight to its next huge problem: taking off and landing. For an ME-262 pilot, the beginning and end of every flight were the most dangerous parts. During its long takeoff run and slow, wide landing approach, the jet was a sitting duck. It couldn't accelerate quickly to escape an attack, and it couldn't maneuver well enough to defend itself. It was in these predictable, vulnerable moments near its own airfield that the jet lost its speed advantage and became just another target. Finally, if an ME-262 was ever foolish enough to get into a classic turning dogfight, it was done for. The jet was stable at high speeds, but its design gave it a wide turning radius. It just couldn't outturn the nimbler P-51 Mustang. The Mustang, with its excellent handling, could turn inside the jet, make it lose speed, and get right on its tail. Once an ME-262 slowed down, it was too heavy, and its engines were too slow to respond to get the advantage back. It was dead in the water. The futuristic jet was a monster of a high-speed interceptor, but it was a clumsy, vulnerable brawler. Before we reveal the single biggest factor that sealed the ME-262's fate, if you're enjoying this deep dive into aviation history, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. Your support helps us keep these stories of incredible machines and brave pilots alive. The one crucial advantage: the hunter's mindset. So, what was the P-51's real advantage? It wasn't a piece of hardware. It wasn't its guns, its engine, or even its incredible range. The advantage that crushed the ME-262 was a fundamental shift in strategy. It was a brand new, ruthless tactical mindset born out of pure necessity. Allied pilots stopped trying to fight the ME-262 on its terms. They refused to play a high-speed game they knew they couldn't win. Instead, they became hunters. This new strategy was brutally simple. Don't chase the jets, ambush them. Allied command quickly figured out the ME-262's biggest weakness was its reliance on its home airfield. Using their superior numbers and the P-51's long range, the USAAF started organizing fighter sweeps with one mission: to hunt jets. Mustang squadrons would fly deep into Germany and circle high above known AE-262 bases, patiently waiting. They became silent predators circling the flock. When the jets returned from their missions, low on fuel and flying slow, the Mustangs would pounce. Diving from thousands of feet above, a P-51 could build up tremendous speed, temporarily closing the gap with the jets. They would sweep down on the helpless Me-262S as they were lining up for their landing approach, with their wheels down and engines spooled back. The first confirmed P-51 kills against an ME-262 happened this way on October 7th in 1944 when Lieutenant Urban Drew shot down 2 jets near their airfield. This tactic, known as rat catching, became the primary way to deal with the jet threat. The Luftwaffe tried to fight back by setting up massive anti-aircraft gun corridors around their airfields, but the sheer number of Mustangs in the sky made it a losing fight. This strategy completely changed the P-51's role. It was no longer just a bodyguard for bombers, but an aggressor that took the fight straight to the enemy's front door. The Mustang's incredible range meant it could patrol for hours, deep in enemy territory, applying constant, suffocating pressure, while Germany built around 1,400 Me-262s. Only a small fraction were ever operational at one time because of fuel shortages, a lack of trained pilots, and all those engine problems. They were simply swarmed by the thousands of P-51s that now owned the skies over the Reich. Pilot stories, proof in combat. You can see how this all played out in the combat reports from the pilots themselves. American aces like Clayton Kelly Gross added Me-262s to their victory lists. In one famous engagement, gun camera footage from Lieutenant H.L. Edwards shows his P-51 diving on an Me-262 and sending it crashing down. These weren't just one-off events. In total, P-51 pilots were credited with shooting down more than 100 of the formidable jets. On the other side, the danger for German pilots was immense, even for the top aces. On November 8, 1944, Major Walter Nowotny, a legendary ace with over 250 kills, was flying a mission against American bombers. After claiming a bomber and a P-51, he reported engine failure. As he tried to handle the emergency, he was attacked by Mustangs and killed. It was a tragic reminder that even the best German pilots were incredibly vulnerable to the P-51's relentless hunting tactics. Post-war interviews with German pilots confirmed that while the Me-262 was devastating against bombers, tangling with swarms of Allied fighters was a totally different and far more dangerous game. The verdict. So, what was the P-51's one advantage? It was the strategy of refusing to fight fair. The Me-262 was a technological marvel, a peek into the future of aviation, but it was an incomplete weapon, plagued by its new technology and deployed by a nation on the brink of collapse. Its speed was its greatest asset, but that speed was only useful under a very specific set of circumstances. The P-51 Mustang, while technically a generation behind, was the right tool for the job. It was reliable, maneuverable, and there were a lot of them. Most importantly, it had the endurance to enforce a new, smarter doctrine. The crucial advantage was the Allies' ability to spot their enemies' weaknesses and adapt their tactics to exploit them without mercy. They changed the rules of the fight, turning the sky over German airfields into a hunting ground where the futuristic jet became the prey. The victory of the P-51 over the Me-262 is a timeless lesson in warfare. The most advanced tech doesn't guarantee a win. Real dominance comes from having a superior combat system, a combination of the right machine, the right training, and above all, the right strategy. The Mustang didn't win by being faster. It won by being smarter.